Hello, my name is Julia. I teach literature, and for today's class I chose the poem written by Emily Dickinson, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. If we want to understand Emily Dickinson's work, we should understand her background and to know something about her life. When I say Emily Dickinson, many people think of her as a depressing poet. I wouldn't find her depressing. I would say she's investigative. She establishes the argument at the beginning of her poem, and she starts to contemplate. She's looking for the answers. Her life was not easy. Her mother died when she was young, and her cousin, with whom she was very close, died too. Even her house was very close to the cemetery, so on a daily basis she was able to see funeral processions. All these things might slightly change her perception of death and how she dealt with death. She was definitely a visionary poet. Nobody wrote poems as she did in the 19th century. She uses short lines, slant rhyme. She also uses very unconventional punctuation and capitalization. There is one punctuation sign that she uses more than any other in her poems, and that's a dash. What do dashes do in terms of punctuation? They break up a line. They pause. It's not a period. It's not something final. She contemplates. So she uses form of her poems and structure of her poems to transmit her ideas and her thinking of such matters as death or immortality. Let's have a look at her poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly draw, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children stroll, at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain, we passed the setting sun, or rather he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer, my gown, my tippet, only tulip. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. 3. In the first line, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, Emily Dickinson is trying to say she didn't want to die. We are not prepared for death. It comes whenever we don't expect it. She said to herself, well, we're clearly afraid of death just because we don't know what it is all about. So let's practice. That's what she said. She was considered an eccentric poet. She was wearing her white gown as she was going to be buried. She lied on her bed and she thought how it is going to be when I die. So she continues, he kindly stopped for me. Here we can see that she personifies death. It's a person for her. What's more, he's kind. He's a gentleman inviting her to the carriage. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. Back then, when a person died, usually the carriage came, took the body, and there was a funeral procession to the graveside. A person died in his or her bed. So here we see the carriage as a means of transportation, how she died. It clearly says she wanted to die calmly, chill. Immortality might be our energy, our soul. She was a believer. She believed in afterlife, at least she wanted to. And this immortality goes into a different box than the body goes. 3. We slowly draw, he knew no haste. As we see in this line, the carriage is going slowly. The death is very kind, is very polite, and is allowing her to think and take her time. And I had to put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. Again, when the death comes, we have to leave everything. You don't care about either labor or leisure. Whatever you do goes aside. Let's move We pass the school where children stroll, at recess in the rain. What happens here? The author is in the carriage. She is dying, and she thinks of school. She thinks of when she was a kid, and she was at recess in the rain. Happy memories, childhood memories. We say that, or people say, that before we die, we see all our life, as she wants to see those nice moments from her childhood. We pass the fields of gazing grain. That might be some kind of prime of her life, the best moments of her life, that she's recalling. We pass the setting sun. Now it's changing. The setting sun might be a metaphor for coming death. So it's getting dark. The sun is setting down. Or rather, he passed us. The dews grew quivering and chill. You see that the tone of the poem changes. It's cold. It's more tense. She's coming to death. She's closer to death every step, and she's getting afraid. She probably feels deceived by death. For only gossamer my dawn, my tippet only tool. Only now she realizes that she's underdressed. She was not freezing before. Now when she's closer to death, she feels that it's not as she would like to be. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. Here we have another house. First, she died in her house. Now, this house might be her last place, the place where she's going to spend eternity. As soon as we come to the second line, a swelling of the ground, we see it's not a real house. It's just a cold, damp grave. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice but a mound. Disappointment. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet each feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. So we see here that the author says she has been dead for centuries, and each century feels shorter than a day. She imagines how it is going to be when we die. We don't perceive the time in the same manner. There's no time. It doesn't exist. And she is recalling that day when she died and she was taken on the carriage, seeing the horses' heads from the carriage. To sum up, we see that the poem is about trying to understand death and how it's going to be, trying to be on good terms with death, but ending up disappointed. Now she's not sure if there's any afterlife. She just sees damp, deep grave. We can also see how the author uses the structure, form, language of the poem to powerfully transmit the idea of death and immortality. Thank you for your attention.